letting what goes on the inside just blows me away. I mean, I had no idea how amazing things were inside your company, and congratulations on that. When you were bought, I think the expectation among, well, certainly my household was, oh no, there goes that great customer service, and by extension, there goes that great corporate culture. Can you comment on the integration and how that's affecting your culture?
Yeah, so Amazon has acquired a lot of different companies, and ours is relatively unique in that they recognize that culture is what's gotten us to where we are, and so they want to make sure not to do anything to harm that culture. And so the way they told us to think about it is basically it's as if we're swapping out our board of directors. So once a quarter, there's going to be 3 of us from Zappos meeting with 3 of them from Amazon, just to go over the progress of the company, which is what we used to do with our previous board of directors. But then really to think of them as this giant consulting company that we can hire, different departments can decide to hire for free if we want to. So we're leaving it up to each of our department heads, what they want to do with their counterpart on the Amazon side, and they can choose not to do anything. We're not being basically forced to integrate anything. The only requirement is because they're part of a public company, there's some things that we have to do as being part of a public company, but that's really the only major change for us.
So my focus is on management of time. Time is measured in seconds, and the second which is there, once the riddle moves, is gone, it's become history. And so how do you implement time management in your culture?
I think there's a book I would recommend. I'm trying to think of the title. I think it's called The Power of Full Engagement. And basically the underlying philosophy is it actually makes more sense to manage your energy rather than your time. And having employees, just because an employee is there for 8 hours does not mean you're being productive for 8 hours. And I think most of us have all been in situations where we're not being productive even though we're putting in the time. And so that goes back to that whole motivation versus inspiration thing. It's like, if employees are inspired and find inspiration in their work, then it's not necessarily about how you like the time creates itself in a lot of ways. And the other thing that we do is, and for the entrepreneurs in this room, we know that there's not a clear separation between work and life. And we take that same philosophy at Zappos. Like, for us, it's just life. And most employees, when they leave the office, leave to hang out with other Zappos employees. And when we train new managers, we tell them you should actually be spending 10 to 20% of your time outside the office and hanging out, getting to know your teammates and whoever you're working with better. And so the initial response we get from people, from new managers that have not been with the company very long, is exactly what you're saying. Like, where am I going to come up with the time to work with this extra 10 to 20% of the time? And then we surveyed the other people in the room, and some of them have been managers and around at Zappos for longer periods of time, and we asked them, for those of you that have done it, how much more productive is your team? Because levels of communication are higher. There's a higher level of trust. People are willing to do favors for each other because they're doing favors for friends, not as coworkers. And the answers we get back range anywhere from 20% to 100% more productive. So kind of worst case scenario, you're breaking even, but having more fun. And so that's basically how we end up thinking about it.
Thank you.
So what time is it? Does
It's about 1/4 after.
Okay.
We could go 15 if you want.
Yeah, so let me just wrap up with this section then. So I asked you guys to think about what is your goal in life. And what's interesting is if you ask different people this question, you get all sorts of different answers. So, some people say their goal in life is to grow a company. And I imagine that's a lot of people in this room. And I heard some people say get a great job, some people say boyfriend or girlfriend. And then you ask yourself why. And I would encourage you to ask yourself why. And then you'll get a bunch of other answers. Some people say retire early, make money, find a soulmate, and then ask yourself why again. And so whatever answer you came up for yourself, ask yourself why. And then you get into like, oh, so I can buy a home or spend more time with family, get married. And then, what's interesting is if you keep asking why enough times, everyone actually eventually gets the same answer. And it's because they believe that whatever it is that they're pursuing, whatever their goal is in life, will ultimately make them happy, bring them happiness. So I thought this was pretty interesting, and a couple years ago, having nothing to do with Zappos, I started just more as a hobby than anything else, reading about, reading different books and articles about this field that was really about the science of happiness. And kind of the formal name for it is positive psychology. And what's interesting is that prior to 1998, this field didn't even exist at all. Prior to 1998, almost all of psychology was about looking at how do you take people that have something wrong with them and make them more normal. But no one ever bothered to study how do you take normal people and make them happier. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and one of the consistent things that I found through the research was that people are very bad at actually predicting what will make them happy in the long term. And a lot of people think, when I get this, then I'll be happy. When I achieve this, then I'll be happy. When actually all the research has shown that that's not actually true. There's been so many studies of lottery winners, for example. You look at their happiness level right before winning the lottery, and then compare it to a year after winning the lottery, and it's usually the same or even a little lower than before winning the lottery. So I thought, okay, that was interesting. So if people are bad at predicting what will make them happy, then it would be worthwhile to learn a little bit about it. And for me, there's a lot of science in the business of Zappos, whether it's talking about new customer acquisition metrics or repeat customer behavior or conversion metrics on the website. And I don't know what the right percentage is, but what if you spent just 10% of your time actually learning about the research that's already been done about the science of happiness? How much happier could you be? A lot of people go through their entire lives trying to get to that final destination of happiness, and many people don't make it, or a lot of people take an extra long time to get there because they're going through all this. But if that's the ultimate goal, what if by studying the science of happiness, just learning a little bit about it, you could basically take a shortcut and go straight to the happiness part and avoid a lot of the extra work in between? So I thought that was interesting, and so I just wanted to share with all of you some of the stuff that I've learned just through the research and the books and articles that I've been reading. So a few different frameworks of happiness. First framework is that happiness is really just about four things: perceived control, perceived progress, connectedness, meaning the number and depth of relationships, and vision, meaning being part of something bigger than yourself. And what's interesting is that you can apply this not only to your own personal life, but to business as well, whether it's with customers or employees. So I'll give some examples of how we apply these at Zappos. For perceived control, it used to be that in our call center and in our warehouse, people didn't really have control over their raises. Just once a year they would get a raise, and then throughout that year we'd say, okay, here's the additional training you have to do in order to be an employee in good standing. So people didn't have control over their training either. Well, a few years ago we decided to change it, and instead we came up with these 20 or so different, we call them skill sets, but they're essentially like merit badges in the Boy Scouts, where you can get trained on a skill set, get certified, and then associated with these skill set would be a small button pay. So, for example, someone that initially was only talking on the phone could be trained in how to do emails, and then they might get a 15-cent per hour button pay there. And what we found was that employees were suddenly a lot happier because there were employees that were really ambitious and wanted to make more money, and so they went after and eventually got these 20 skill sets. And there were other employees that were semi-retired and still passionate about the company, but really weren't that interested in learning additional skill sets and were happy just staying at the same pay range. And then there were other employees who only wanted to go after the skill sets that involved talking on the phone because they really loved that voice interaction with customers. And so they went after half of the skill sets, and they were happy. And so